John Curtis believed people should know their place. Born into old money and elite circles, he'd been taught that the world had a natural order, and some people simply didn't belong. At 37, he had never questioned the hierarchy, until Charlotte Nolan walked into that charity gala with confidence that matched his own and intelligence that exceeded it, and his carefully constructed world began to crumble. But before we dive into this incredible transformation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next story. Drop a like if you love romance that breaks all barriers, and comment below. Have you ever had someone completely change your perspective on life? Let's hear your stories. This is the tale of a man who thought he had everything: wealth, status, power, until he met the woman who showed him he had nothing that mattered. A story of privilege, prejudice, and the power of love to transform even the most hardened heart. Let's begin. John Curtis was a man who never questioned his place in the world. At 37, he moved through life with the easy confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. Heir to the Curtis fortune, educated at Yale, polished by years of country club lunches and boardroom victories, he believed in order, structure, hierarchy. His world was one of garden parties and charity galas, of knowing which families mattered and which didn't. He had been raised to believe that lineage opened doors that money alone never could. Old money belonged with old money. New money was tolerated with polite distance. And people without money? They simply didn't exist in his carefully curated orbit. He wasn't cruel about it. He simply believed it was the natural order of things. Some people were born to lead, others to follow. That's just how the world worked. His penthouse overlooked the city, all glass and steel and carefully selected art. His closet held custom suits from Savile Row. His calendar filled with obligations that mattered to people who mattered. Yet somehow, in the quiet moments between meetings and galas, John felt a hollowness he couldn't name. He dated women from appropriate families, had engaged conversations about market trends and vacation homes. But nothing ever went deeper than surface pleasantries. Nothing ever felt real. The Kensington Charity Gala was meant to be just another evening of writing checks and making appearances. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, and guests mingled in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. John stood near the auction display, surveying a rare 19th century manuscript he intended to acquire. Then she walked in. Charlotte Nolan entered the ballroom like she owned it. She wore an elegant cream gown that flowed like water, her natural curls framing her face in soft waves. But it wasn't the dress or her stunning beauty that caught John's attention. It was her presence, confident, unhurried, completely unbothered by the weight of old money surrounding her. When the auction began, John raised his paddle for the manuscript. 20,000, 25, 30. Then a voice, warm and clear, called out from across the room. 40,000. John turned, startled. It was her. She met his gaze with a slight smile, completely calm. He raised again. 50,000. 60. She countered without hesitation. The room fell silent, watching the unexpected showdown. John felt his jaw tighten. Who was this woman, and how dare she challenge him? 70,000, he said firmly. She tilted her head, considering him with those intelligent eyes. Then, with a grace that made his heart pound, she raised her paddle one final time. 80,000. The auctioneer looked at John. He could go higher. He should go higher. But something in her unwavering confidence made him lower his paddle. Sold. To the lady in cream. As applause rippled through the ballroom, John felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt off balance. John couldn't help himself. As the auction concluded, he made his way across the ballroom toward her. She stood examining her winning bid, a small smile playing on her lips. Congratulations, John said smoothly, extending his hand. John Curtis. She turned, and up close, she was even more striking. Her eyes held intelligence and something else, a quiet amusement, as though she found the entire evening entertaining. Charlotte Nolan, she replied, shaking his hand with a firm grip. And thank you, though I suspect congratulations aren't quite what you came to offer. He blinked. I'm sorry. You came to find out who I am and why I dared outbid you, she said pleasantly. It must be unfamiliar territory, Mr. Curtis. Second place. John felt heat creep up his neck. He wasn't used to being read so easily. I simply wanted to meet someone with such refined taste in literature. Of course you did, Charlotte said, her tone light but knowing. And now you're wondering if I actually know what I bought or if I just like expensive things. He opened his mouth to protest, but she raised an eyebrow, daring him to lie. The Thornfield manuscript, Charlotte continued, is a collection of correspondence between social reformers during the suffrage movement. It's significant not because it's rare, though it is, but because it represents voices that were systematically silenced. I'm donating it to the Women's History Archive. John stood speechless. He'd wanted it for his collection. She'd wanted it for something that mattered. He started, then stopped. That's admirable. And unexpected, she finished for him, her smile widening. Don't worry, Mr. Curtis. I'm used to exceeding expectations, especially from people who assume I don't belong. There was no bitterness in her voice, just fact. And it cut deeper than any accusation could have. I didn't assume, he began. Yes, you did, Charlotte said gently. But that's all right. Most people in this room did too. I'm not offended. I'm just not interested in proving myself to anyone anymore. She turned to leave, and John felt panic rise in his chest. He didn't want her to go. Not yet. Would you like to get a drink? He asked quickly. Charlotte paused, considering him. Why? Because you're the most interesting person I've met in years, John admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. She studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she nodded. One drink, Mr. Curtis. But only because I'm curious what a man like you considers interesting. They moved to the bar, and what began as cautious conversation slowly transformed into something unexpected. She was brilliant, well-read, challenging. When he mentioned his venture capital firm, she asked pointed questions about his investment philosophy that revealed more knowledge than most of his partners possessed. You seem to know quite a bit about venture capital, John observed. I should, Charlotte replied. I've pitched to enough firms, though very few that look like yours. What do you mean? Old money. Traditional. Risk-averse despite claims otherwise, she said without judgment. Most legacy firms prefer safe bets. They don't typically fund people like me. People like you? John asked carefully. Charlotte met his eyes directly. Self-made. No connections. No pedigree. Just ideas and determination. John felt something shift in his chest. Guilt, maybe. Recognition, definitely. What kind of company do you run? He asked. Tech startup. We develop AI solutions for underserved communities, healthcare access, educational tools, financial literacy platforms, Charlotte explained, her passion evident. Forbes called us one of the most innovative social impact companies last year. John nearly choked on his drink. You're that Charlotte Nolan? Next Gen Solutions. She smiled. I see my reputation precedes me. He'd read about her company, had even discussed it in meetings, but he'd never connected the name to a face and certainly never imagined the founder would be standing at a charity gala, outbidding him with quiet confidence. I'm impressed, John said sincerely. Don't be, Charlotte replied. I just saw a problem and solved it. Nothing impressive about doing what needs to be done. As the evening wore on, John found himself laughing more genuinely than he had in months. Charlotte was funny, quick-witted, and utterly unimpressed by his carefully cultivated persona. When he tried to charm her with stories of his Harvard days, she responded with tales of working 3 jobs to put herself through state college. When he mentioned his family's foundation, she politely noted that charity often perpetuates the systems that create inequality in the first place. She didn't defer, didn't fawn, didn't seem to care about his last name or his net worth. And John realized, with dawning wonder and terror, that he was completely captivated. The morning after the gala, John sat in his office, staring at Charlotte's business card. He'd typed her name into his search engine and spent an hour reading everything he could find. Charlotte Nolan, Forbes 30 Under 30, self-made entrepreneur, keynote speaker on inclusive innovation, founder of programs that provided technology training to low-income communities. She'd built her entire empire from scratch, with no family money, no connections, no advantages beyond her own brilliance and relentless work ethic. John leaned back in his leather chair, something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. How many people like Charlotte had he dismissed over the years? How many brilliant minds had he overlooked because they didn't come wrapped in the right pedigree? His assistant, Margaret, knocked and entered. "Mr. Curtis, the Innovation Summit confirmed your participation. You'll be on the entrepreneurship panel with," she glanced at her tablet, "Charlotte Nolan from NextGen Solutions, Marcus Chun from—" "Wait," John interrupted. "Charlotte Nolan?" "Yes, sir. Is there a problem?" A slow smile spread across his face. "No, Margaret. No problem at all." 3 days later, John walked into the first panel preparation meeting. Charlotte was already there, reviewing notes on her laptop. She looked up when he entered, and her expression shifted to amused recognition. "Mr. Curtis," she said pleasantly. "What a small world." "Please, call me John," he said, taking the seat across from her. "And yes, apparently the world of innovation is smaller than I thought." "Or perhaps," Charlotte suggested, "you're just now noticing who's actually in it." The comment stung because it was true. Over the next 6 weeks, they met regularly to prepare for the summit. What started as professional collaboration slowly evolved into something more. Coffee meetings to discuss panel topics turned into long conversations about philosophy and purpose. Strategy sessions became debates about economic inequality and the role of wealth in society. Charlotte challenged every assumption John had ever held. When he suggested that success was about seizing opportunities, she countered that not everyone was offered the same opportunities to begin with. When he defended traditional investment models, she showed him data proving that diverse founders with unconventional backgrounds often outperformed legacy entrepreneurs. She was brilliant, passionate, and absolutely unafraid to tell a billionaire when he was wrong. And John found himself looking forward to their meetings more than anything else on his calendar. One afternoon, Charlotte invited him to her office. "I want to show you what we're building," she said, "not just tell you about it." Her office was nothing like his. Where John's building was all marble and mahogany, Charlotte's was open concept with exposed brick, collaborative workspaces, and an energy that felt alive. Her team was diverse, different ages, backgrounds, experiences, all working together with genuine enthusiasm. "This is incredible," John admitted, watching the organized chaos. "This is what happens when you hire for talent instead of pedigree," Charlotte said. "Half my team didn't finish college, but they understand the communities we serve because they come from those communities." John watched her move through the space, greeting employees by name, asking about their projects, their families. She didn't just run a company. She built a community. That evening, she took him to a community center in a neighborhood John had never visited despite living in the city his entire life. Charlotte volunteered there twice a month, teaching young people how to code. John watched her work with a teenage girl struggling with a programming problem. Charlotte was patient, encouraging, breaking down complex concepts into understandable pieces. When the girl finally solved it, her face lit up and Charlotte's pride was evident. "Why do you do this?" John asked later as they walked to his car. Charlotte looked at him, surprised. "Because someone did it for me once. Because I remember what it feels like to believe you're not smart enough, not good enough, not the right kind of person to succeed." She paused. "And because talent is everywhere, John, opportunity isn't." That night, driving home through streets he'd never really seen before, John felt something crack open inside him. His entire life had been built on the belief that he'd earned his place through merit and hard work. But Charlotte had worked harder, achieved more, with a fraction of the advantages he'd been handed at birth. What did that say about everything he believed? Their relationship shifted after that night at the community center. The professional distance they'd maintained began to dissolve, replaced by something warmer, more personal. John started finding excuses to see Charlotte outside of panel meetings. Lunch to discuss investment trends. Dinner to review presentation materials. Coffee just because. Charlotte met his growing interest with cautious openness. She'd let him into her world, but she watched him carefully, as though waiting to see who he really was. One Saturday, she invited him to family dinner. Fair warning, Charlotte said as they drove to her childhood neighborhood. My family is loud, opinionated, and they will absolutely interrogate you. John found himself nervous in a way he'd never been before business meetings or high-stakes negotiations. What should I know? Just be yourself, Charlotte said, then added with a smile, or maybe a slightly less privileged version of yourself. Her family home was modest but warm. The moment they walked in, John was enveloped in noise and laughter. Charlotte's mother, Grace, pulled him into a hug before he could introduce himself. Her father, Marcus, shook his hand with a grip that tested his sincerity. Her younger brother, David, asked pointed questions about his intentions. Her grandmother sat in the corner, watching him with sharp, knowing eyes. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. They talked over each other, debated politics, teased Charlotte mercilessly, and made John feel more welcome than his own family ever had. There was no pretense, no performance, just genuine connection. So, John, Grace said as she passed him seconds he didn't refuse. Charlotte says you're in venture capital. You going to fund her expansion? Mom, Charlotte protested. What? It's a fair question, Grace said innocently. John laughed. I'd invest in Charlotte's vision in a heartbeat, though I suspect she doesn't need my money. Damn right she doesn't, David interjected. My sister built everything herself. Language, Grace chided, but she was smiling. Later, as they sat on the back porch, Charlotte's grandmother joined John. You care about my granddaughter, she stated. Not question. Yes, ma'am, John admitted. But you come from a different world, she continued. One that won't welcome her. John swallowed hard. I'm beginning to think my world needs to change. The old woman studied him. Thinking about change and doing something about it are very different things. Which one are you? John didn't have an answer. The following week, Charlotte experienced John's world. He invited her to a dinner party at his country club, a test, though he didn't frame it that way. Charlotte arrived looking stunning in a navy dress, but John saw the subtle tension in her shoulders. This wasn't her territory. The evening was everything John had begun to hate about his life. Stiff conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios. Performative philanthropy. Surface-level pleasantries masking judgmental scrutiny. He watched Charlotte navigate it all with grace, answering questions about her business, deflecting condescending comments with polite firmness. But he also saw the looks, the whispers when she walked by, the subtle ways his social circle marked her as other. When an old family friend, Richard Ashworth, made a comment about self-made success stories being so inspiring, with just enough condescension to sting, John felt anger rise in his throat. But he said nothing. Later, as he drove Charlotte home, the silence between them was heavy. You can say it, John finally said. Say what? That I should have defended you. That I let them treat you like an outsider. Charlotte looked out the window. You did let them. But I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be, John said quietly. No, Charlotte agreed. But that's the world you come from, John. And I need to know, are you strong enough to stand against it? Or will you always choose comfort over courage? The question hung in the air between them, unanswered, because John honestly didn't know. The illusion that John could keep Charlotte separate from his family's scrutiny shattered the following Tuesday. His mother, Patricia Curtis, called him to the family estate for lunch. The moment John arrived, he knew this wasn't a casual invitation. Patricia sat in the sunroom, perfectly postured, her expression pleasant but her eyes calculating. Darling, sit. We need to talk about this Charlotte person. John's jaw tightened. Her name is Charlotte Nolan, and she's not this person. She's a successful entrepreneur and someone I care about. Care about, Patricia repeated carefully. How much? That's my business, Mother. Wrong, Patricia said sharply. You are a Curtis. Everything you do reflects on his family. And parading around with some self-made nobody. She's not a nobody, John interrupted, his voice hard. She's built more than most people in our circle ever will. Built with what, John? No family name, no connections, no breeding. Exactly. John cut her off. She built it with nothing but her own talent and determination. Something our family hasn't had to do for 4 generations. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You sound like you're defending her. I am defending her. His mother stood, smoothing her designer dress. Then let me be clear. This fascination ends now. I've already spoken to Victoria Ashford, my ex-fiancée. John asked incredulously. A woman from a proper family, Patricia corrected. Someone appropriate for a Curtis. She's attending the foundation gala next week, and you'll be her escort. I will not. You will, Patricia said with steel in her voice, or your father and I will reconsider your position in the family trust. The threat hung in the air. John felt trapped between two worlds, the one he'd always known and the one Charlotte represented. I need to go, he said, standing abruptly. Think carefully, John, his mother called after him. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. That night, John met Charlotte for dinner, but he couldn't tell her about his mother's ultimatum. Instead, he was distant, distracted. What's wrong? Charlotte asked gently. Just work stress, John lied. She studied his face, and he knew she didn't believe him. But she let it go. The cracks in their relationship began to show in small ways. John stopped inviting Charlotte to certain events, made excuses when she suggested he attend her work functions, created distance he told himself was temporary. Charlotte noticed. Of course she noticed. 2 weeks later, she confronted him at his office. I'm good enough for coffee dates and private dinners, Charlotte said quietly, but not for your family functions. Not for your social circle. Not for the parts of your life that actually matter. That's not true, John protested weakly. Then invite me to your foundation gala, Charlotte challenged. Introduce me to your parents. Stand beside me in your world the way I've welcomed you into mine. John hesitated, just for a moment, but that moment was enough. Charlotte's expression shifted from hope to resignation. I see. Charlotte, it's complicated. It's not complicated, John, she said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. Either I'm someone worth standing beside, or I'm someone you hide. You can't have both. I'm not hiding you. Yes, you are, Charlotte interrupted. And I deserve better than being someone's secret, someone they're ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of you, John said desperately. Then prove it, Charlotte said simply. Prove that what we have is real, that I'm not just some rebellion against your family's expectations. She left before he could respond. John stood alone in his office, the weight of his choices crushing down on him. He could hear his mother's voice. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. But which bridge was he more afraid to burn? The one leading to his family's approval, or the one leading to Charlotte? That night, he sat in his penthouse, staring at his phone. He drafted a text to Charlotte a dozen times and deleted each one. Finally, he wrote, I'm sorry. You deserve better than my cowardice. Her response came an hour later. Yes, I do. The foundation gala arrived like a storm John couldn't avoid. He told his mother he wouldn't escort Victoria Ashford. Instead, he'd arrived alone, intending to make a quiet appearance and leave. But Victoria was there anyway, positioned perfectly to intercept him. John, darling, she purred, linking her arm through his before he could protest. Your mother told me you'd need a friendly face tonight. Victoria, I don't think. Dance with me, she insisted, already pulling him toward the floor. For old time's sake. Across the ballroom, Charlotte stood near the entrance, invited by the event organizer who'd worked with her nonprofit. She'd almost declined, but something told her to come. Now she watched John, dancing with a blonde woman in a designer gown who looked like she'd been born to wear diamonds. Their eyes met across the room. John's face went pale. He immediately stepped away from Victoria, but the damage was done. Charlotte turned and walked out. John ran after her, catching her on the terrace. Charlotte, wait. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. I don't need an explanation. She's my ex-fiancée. My mother invited her. I didn't want. It doesn't matter what you wanted, John, Charlotte said, tears streaming down her face. It matters what you did, or what you didn't do. She wrapped her arms around herself. I watched you dance with her, watched you play the perfect Curtis air, and I realized something. What? John whispered. You'll never choose me, Charlotte said softly. Not really, because choosing me means rejecting everything you've ever known, and you're not brave enough for that. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, John, Charlotte interrupted. I learned that a long time ago. But I also learned that I deserve someone who isn't afraid to love me in the light. Not just in private. Not just when it's convenient. I do love you, John said desperately. Charlotte looked at him, her eyes full of pain and understanding. I know, but you love your family's approval more. And I can't compete with that. She started to walk away. Something inside John broke. Years of conditioning, of playing the dutiful son, of choosing comfort over conviction. It all shattered in that moment. Charlotte, stop, he said firmly. She turned. John took a deep breath and made his choice. You're right. I've been a coward. Afraid of my family's judgment. Afraid of losing their approval. Afraid of being cut off from everything I've ever known. He stepped closer. But I'm more afraid of losing you. John, no. Let me finish, he continued, his voice stronger now. My mother said some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. She meant the bridge to my family. But I think she was wrong. He took Charlotte's hands. The bridge I can't afford to burn is the one to you. Because you, Charlotte Nolan, are the only real thing in my entire manufactured life. Charlotte's tears fell faster. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose you, John said. I choose us. And I don't care who has a problem with it. He kissed her then, on the terrace, in full view of anyone who cared to look. And Charlotte kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, Charlotte whispered, Your family will never forgive you. Then they'll have to learn to live with disappointment, John replied. Because I'm done living for their approval. I want to live for something real. Are you sure? Charlotte asked, searching his face. I've never been more sure of anything, John promised. They went back inside together, hand in hand. The ballroom fell silent as John Curtis walked through the crowd with Charlotte Nolan on his arm. His mother's face went pale with fury. His father's expression hardened. Victoria looked stunned. But John kept walking, head high, Charlotte beside him. The choice was made. The bridge was burning. And for the first time in his life, John felt free. The fallout was immediate and brutal. By morning, gossip columns had picked up the story. Curtis Ayers' shocking romance. Billionaire's slumming phase. Social climber snags fortune. The articles about Charlotte were vicious. They questioned her motives, her character, her worthiness. They reduced her accomplishments to footnotes and painted her as an opportunist preying on a wealthy man's midlife crisis. John was furious. Charlotte was hurt, but unsurprised. I told you this would happen, she said quietly as they sat in her apartment, reading the headlines. They don't know you, John said angrily. They don't know anything about who you really are. No, Charlotte agreed. But they know what they want to believe. And convincing them otherwise is a battle I can't win. But the media wasn't the worst of it. Charlotte's business began suffering mysterious setbacks. Investors who'd been eager to fund her expansion suddenly backed out without explanation. Partnership deals fell through. Clients requested meetings only to cancel at the last minute. John knew exactly what was happening. His family's reach extended far into the business world, and they were using every connection to isolate Charlotte professionally. They're trying to destroy everything you've built, John said, rage making his voice shake. They're trying to make me go away, Charlotte corrected. Make me not worth the trouble. I won't let them. You can't stop them, John, Charlotte said wearily. This is what power looks like when it's threatened. And I'm the threat. John held her close, feeling helpless for the first time in his privileged life. Meanwhile, his own family made their position crystal clear. His father called him to the estate and delivered an ultimatum. In this relationship, or you're out of the family business, out of the trust, out of the Curtis legacy entirely. Then I'm out, John said without hesitation. His father's shock was evident. You'd throw away everything for some girl? She's not some girl, John said firmly. She's the woman I love, and she's worth more than any legacy you're offering. You're making a mistake, his father warned. No, John replied. The mistake was thinking your approval mattered more than my happiness. But despite his brave words, the pressure was taking its toll on both of them. One night, John found Charlotte on her balcony, staring at the city lights, tears streaming down her face. What if they're right? She whispered. What if I'm ruining your life? "You're saving my life," John said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How can you say that when you're losing everything?" "Because I'm gaining everything that matters," John replied. "Charlotte, I spent 37 years living someone else's version of success. It was empty, meaningless. You showed me what it means to build something real, to care about something beyond profit margins and social standing." Charlotte turned in his arms, her eyes searching his face. "But what if the cost is too high? What if you end up resenting me?" "Impossible," John said firmly. "The only thing I'd resent is a life without you in it." She laid her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm scared, John. Scared that love isn't enough. That the world will break us. Then we'll break the world first," John promised. Together. The real test came at the annual Curtis Foundation Gala, the most important event on his family's social calendar. John had been explicitly ordered not to attend, his name removed from the host committee. But John Curtis was done following orders. The night of the Curtis Foundation Gala, Charlotte dressed in her most elegant gown, a stunning emerald silk that made her look like royalty. John wore his finest tuxedo, his jaw set with determination. "You don't have to do this," Charlotte said as they prepared to leave. "We can build a life without their approval." "I know," John replied, taking her hand. "But I need to do this. Not for them. For us. To show you that I'm not ashamed of loving you. That I'll stand beside you anywhere, in any room, against anyone." When they arrived at the gala, the reaction was electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. All eyes turned to John Curtis walking through the grand entrance with Charlotte Nolan on his arm. His mother, Patricia, went rigid. His father's face darkened with fury. Victoria Ashford looked mortified. The entire social elite of the city watched in stunned silence. John kept walking, head high, leading Charlotte into the heart of his family's world. Patricia intercepted them near the auction displays. "John, a word. In private. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Charlotte," John replied calmly. His mother's smile was ice. "Very well. You're embarrassing this family. Making a spectacle. I'm living my life," John interrupted, "and introducing the woman I love to people who should matter to me. Though I'm beginning to question whether they do." "This woman is not," Patricia began. "Careful, mother," John warned, his voice dropping. "Be very careful what you say next." Patricia's eyes flashed. "She doesn't belong here." "Then neither do I," John said simply. The confrontation was drawing attention. Guests pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. Charlotte gently squeezed John's hand. "John, it's okay. We can leave." "No," John said firmly. He turned to address the growing audience. "Actually, I have something to say. To all of you." He led Charlotte to the center of the room, near the stage where speeches were typically given during the program. Someone handed him a microphone, perhaps out of curiosity about what scandal was about to unfold. John took a breath and addressed the crowd. "Many of you have known me my entire life. You watched me grow up in this world of privilege and expectations. You taught me that family name mattered, that social standing was everything, that some people were simply born better than others." He paused, looking around at the sea of elegant faces. "You were wrong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Charlotte Nolan," John continued, gesturing to her, "has accomplished more with her own merit than most people in this room have accomplished with generations of inherited wealth. She built a company from nothing. She creates opportunities for communities that society has ignored. She measures success not by profit margins, but by impact." His voice grew stronger. "And I love her, not despite where she comes from, but because of who she's become through her own strength and determination." Patricia looked horrified. His father stood frozen. "My family taught me about legacy, about honor, about maintaining standards," John went on. "But they never taught me about courage. Charlotte showed me what real courage looks like. It's not being born into power. It's building something meaningful when you have nothing. It's standing tall when the world tells you to shrink. It's loving someone even when it costs you everything." He turned to Charlotte, whose eyes were bright with tears. "I thought you were beneath my world," John said softly. Just to her, though the microphone carried his words to everyone. I was wrong. You weren't beneath it. You were above it. And you showed me that the world I was born into was just one world, not the whole world. Certainly not the best world. Charlotte's hand trembled in his. John addressed the crowd one final time. So, if being with her means I'm no longer worthy of the Curtis name, then perhaps the Curtis name was never worth having. Because I'd rather live one authentic day with Charlotte than a lifetime of pretending to be someone I'm not. He handed back the microphone and walked out, Charlotte beside him, leaving a stunned and silent ballroom in their wake. Outside, in the cool night air, Charlotte finally spoke. John Curtis, you beautiful, reckless man. What did you just do? I chose us, John said simply. I chose truth. I chose love. You chose to burn every bridge you ever had, Charlotte said, though she was smiling through her tears. No, John corrected, pulling her close. I chose to build a new bridge, to a better world, with you. They kissed under the stars, two people who'd found each other across impossible divides, proving that love could indeed conquer all the barriers society built. The aftermath of John's declaration was complicated but liberating. His family cut him off completely. The trust fund vanished. The family business closed its doors. His name was removed from the Curtis Foundation board. But John discovered something remarkable. He didn't need any of it. He restructured his venture capital firm as an independent entity, focusing on investments that aligned with his new values. Companies founded by overlooked entrepreneurs, businesses creating social impact, startups solving real problems for underserved communities. Charlotte became his partner in every sense. Together, they built a portfolio that proved conscious investing could be both profitable and purposeful. John's younger sister, Emily, secretly reached out 3 months later. I've been watching what you're doing, she said over coffee. Building something real instead of just inheriting something hollow. She paused. You were right, John. At the gala. About all of it. Thank you, John said, genuinely moved. I want out too, Emily admitted. I want to build my own life. Can you help me? John smiled. Absolutely. His stand had given someone else permission to be brave. 6 months after the gala, on a quiet Saturday morning, John took Charlotte to the community center where she volunteered. The teenagers were there, working on their coding projects, and Charlotte greeted each one by name. John watched her, this brilliant woman who transformed his entire understanding of worth and value and love. She belonged everywhere she went, not because she demanded acceptance, but because she brought authenticity, intelligence, and compassion wherever she stood. After the session ended and the students left, John knelt on one knee. Charlotte's hands flew to her mouth. Charlotte Nolan, John began, his voice thick with emotion, you didn't complete my world. You showed me I was living in the wrong one. You taught me that privilege without purpose is poverty. That love requires courage. That real success is measured by who you lift up, not how high you climb. Tears streamed down Charlotte's face. You turned out to be my whole world, John continued. Not because you filled some empty space, but because you showed me what it means to live fully, love deeply, and build something meaningful. Will you marry me? Yes, Charlotte whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding, months later, was perfect in its imperfection. Not in a grand cathedral, but in a beautiful garden. Not with society's elite, but with people who mattered. Charlotte's family, their friends, colleague from both their companies, student from the community center, and even John's sister Emily, who attended despite family backlash. As John stood at the altar watching Charlotte walk toward him, he thought about the man he used to be. The one who measured worth by lineage and bank accounts. The one who would have dismissed her without a second glance. That man was gone. In his place stood someone better. Someone who understood that the greatest privilege wasn't being born into the right family. It was choosing the right partner. Someone who knew that love worth having was love worth fighting for. Charlotte reached him, radiant and beautiful, and took his hands. I had vows prepared, John admitted with a smile. But standing here, all I can think is that you saved me. From a life of empty privilege. From becoming the man my family expected. From never knowing what it means to truly love someone. You saved yourself, Charlotte corrected gently. You just needed someone to show you it was possible. Then thank you, John said, for being impossible to ignore, for refusing to know your place, for standing so tall in your truth that I had no choice but to see my own lies. Their vows continued, intimate and honest, witnessed by people who believed in them. When they kissed, the applause was deafening. At the reception, as they danced under string lights, Charlotte whispered, "Do you regret it? Losing your family, your inheritance, everything you grew up with." John pulled back to look at her. "I lost nothing that mattered and gained everything worth having." He smiled. "You weren't beneath my world, Charlotte. You were my whole world. I just needed to be brave enough to see it." "And now?" she asked. "Now," John said, "I'm the richest man alive. Because I have you." They danced into the night, two people who'd found each other across impossible divides, proving that love, real, courageous, transformative love, could indeed conquer all. John Curtis had been born into privilege, but found purpose through love. Charlotte Nolan had built her world from nothing and became everything to someone who finally learned to see. Together, they built a life that mattered. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And in the end, that was the only kind of happily ever after worth having. The end. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more transformative love stories. Hit that like button and comment below. What would you sacrifice for true love? Your engagement means everything to us. Until next time, keep believing in love that changes everything.